Okay, let's talk about the story arc. So, because I gotta roll. So the story arc is the way all stories are told. The arc I'm going to show you is the one that I use. This is really the hero's journey. It's incredibly common. It's in almost every movie you've ever seen, period, in one form or another. If you don't follow it, your story won't really work, unfortunately. The basic story arc is simple. I was walking with my cat one day outside, and a horn blew. The cat got scared and ran up the tree. Right? Oh no, what am I going to do? I tried to get him down. I started climbing up the tree even, and he just went further up the tree. Oh no, it's even worse now. When two of the neighborhood kids grabbed the bottom limb and started to climb up to get him, he went all the way out on the farthest limb, the tallest point of the tree. And we called the fire department. We had to call the fire department. They brought out the fire truck, and it made Fluffy even more nervous. And they finally brought out the ladder and the bucket, and the fireman went up the tree. And just as he reached out for Fluffy, Fluffy fell off the branch. But the fireman grabbed Fluffy by the tail and with a threw her in the bucket. And everything was okay. Right? And now Fluffy and I are together on the couch again, and I know to never take Fluffy to the park without putting her in her carrier or whatever, right? So everything's back to normal. So the cat up the tree. That's the quintessential story arc, right? So here's the story arc. The start, everything is normal, right? Establish a routine. In almost every movie you've ever watched, you establish a routine. What's life normally like, right? There's an inciting incident very soon. Something happens that shakes the hero's life upside down. You're all getting to a turning point here. But with almost every turning point, a big change in life, a thing happens, right? So it's an inciting incident. There are obstacles placed in the way of the hero, right? I left out a piece. The inciting incident, between the inciting incident and obstacles, is the acceptance of the call. So the hero decides, hey, this happened to me, but I decided I knew what had to be done. I'm taking on the challenge, right? I'm doing this thing. There are obstacles. Things get worse. There's usually a villain that comes in. They call it an antagonist in the storyline. There's an antagonist. There's a villain that comes in that you're fighting against. Things get even worse because now it's not just this thing that happened. It's I wrecked my car in the middle of Compton, right? And that was bad, and I'm walking home. But now I'm being approached by 3 street thugs, right? Who are going to follow me all over, right? So that things get worse. Then usually somewhere along the line, a love interest pops in, right? Keeps things interesting. Then a sidekick, right? Somebody comes to your aid. There's a minor victory. Then tensions rise. Things get worse. Finally, they reach impossible. Anybody read John Grisham? You ever notice how Grisham's characters, they're never going to get out of the hole, but then they do somehow, right? It's just bad to worse, to worse, to worse, to worse, to impossible, to there's no freaking way out, and then somehow they wiggle out. By the way, when you do give, this is not in the arc, when you do give your hero a way out, it has to be something that was revealed earlier in the story. So how did I do this with you guys? It was all true, by the way, 100% true. But I told you about meeting, remember? I met the chemist. Remember the chemist in the sales letter? Did y'all read the sales letter? Or you said, Perry's awesome, here's money. But in the sales letter, I talk about learning. My first lesson in copy was from a guy called the chemist, who was a chemist, he was a friend of mine. And I learned how to build stories. I learned how to build offers from the chemist, right? And then when I lost everything, when I almost went to jail in Memphis, Tennessee, when I got wiped out, I was on every freaking internet blog, in the world, and I lost all my money, and it was a super big giant mess. I could have went in a hole and sucked my thumb. I could have blown my brains out, which I think some people would have done. But I remembered. Things got worse and worse and worse. And then I remembered the chemist. and what he had taught me. Right? So the solution has to have been revealed. In any good mystery, they have to show the candlestick on the mantle 30 minutes before you whack the guy in the head with it. Right? Or it doesn't work. For whatever reason, that doesn't work in the story. It doesn't make the story as good. So tensions keep rising to impossible. Then there's a climax. And the obstacle is overcome, right? By the way, this always happens 5 minutes before the movie's over. Because nobody's going to stay around and watch. Because why? No more trouble. It becomes totally disinteresting. So you have to, as soon as you reach that point in the story, the climax in the story, deliver your lesson, right? Give them relief, deliver the lesson, and get the hell out of there. The villain loses, the lesson is learned. Hopefully our guy gets the girl or gets a chance at the girl. Most movies end where they get a chance at the girl. They don't get the girl. So it lets your imagination get more involved in the story of I wonder what happened. Like at the end of The Sopranos, they're just eating and it ends. And you're like, I'll bet somebody came in there with a machete and chopped their heads off. I'll bet Tony was Tony fine and everything was cool. I'll bet Jimmy Bag of Donuts stabbed him in the back. You don't know, right? But that lets you have more involvement in the story. Although it might piss you off that you didn't get closure, it gave you more involvement in the story, right? Everything's better before, and the lesson is learned, right? So it's accepted in Hollywood that the best story arc ever created is the one for Die Hard, the movie Die Hard. It's the purest of all story arcs, right? So do you remember it? So what happened? John's going home for Christmas. He in the back of his mind, you don't know this yet, but he really wants to get on the good side of his ex-wife because he's still in love with her. He wants to see his kid, yada, yada, yada. He gets the limo. He goes to everything's normal. He's talking on the phone. Everything's cool. All of a sudden, the Nakatomi Tower blows up. It's being taken over by these terrible terrorists. He happens to be a cop, right? So he's got some skills. So his character development, we'll talk about character development a little bit, but characters are flawed. Characters need to be good people with flawed character, right? They really do. You know, it used to be that James Arnaz, the guy that did Gunsmoke, was the big hero. He would be a terrible hero today. Today it's Dexter. Much more complex characters, right? I can't remember if it's DC or Marvel, but I think it's DC. DC's characters were all good. Superman was all good. Superman's boring. He's all good. DC went to Batman, The Dark Knight, right? He's good, but not all good, right? He has a real evil streak. He's a real prick. There's a joke. Shit, I can't tell the joke now. Damn it. Ruined the punchline. I'll tell the joke anyway. There's a joke where there's two guys who are sitting in the bar in New York City, and then one guy says, I bet I can jump out this window, hit the canopy downstairs, and bounce back up. He says, there's no way you can do that. He said, watch me. I used to be a trampoline jumper. So watch. The guy jumps down, hits a trampoline, jumps back up, grabs the window, calls back in. He says, bet you $100 you can't do it. And the guy says, well, shit, you did, I can do it. The guy jumps out of the window, rips through the canopy, splats all over the sidewalk downstairs, dead as fried chicken. The bartender looks at him and looks at the other guy and says, you know, Superman, you can be a real asshole when you've had a few drinks. Anyway, so Die Hard is a great example. But think about the story arc, right? You've got is the Knicks? Yeah. So now you can take your picture. So the start is, the start is calm. Yeah, there are obstacles. What happens? Well, the villain wins a little bit. He wins a little. At the beginning, though, it's just bad, bad, bad. The villain's super evil. The villain's on a mission too, right? The villain needs a mission, right, for the most part. Things get worse. Who was a sidekick? The cop eating the Twinkies in the car downstairs, right? That was his sidekick. That was his buddy. Who was the love interest? That was already established. It was his ex-wife, right? After the sidekick comes along, if you remember the movie, he has 2 or 3 minor victories. He kills some of the bad guys. It looks like he's going to get up on the villain, right? And then all of a sudden, next scene, he's tied to a chair with 2 guys with a gun on him. It's impossible. He can't possibly get out. But if you remember, there was a nail gun that he kept walking around the whole thing, right? And he grabs a nail gun, shoots the guy in the head, and gets away. He goes down, kills everybody. The relief has happened. The villain loses. He falls down. The lesson is learned. He gets the girl, and things are better off than before. That's the story arc, right? But that wouldn't work for just any story, right? What's the story arc? It's this one. The ogre's just living in the tree, being happy, wallowing in the mud. He's just having a good day. The inciting incident is all of a sudden this princess is dropped on his doorstep and she's in distress, right? So he's going to take her back to the kingdom, right? So he takes her along. And as they're going along, they develop a love interest. And then the villain comes. Who's the villain? The little midget king guy, right? What is it about midgets and kings in England? It's a big deal. They do that in, what's the Game of Thrones is the little guy. Isn't that funny? I don't know. Anyway, there's a villain. Who's the sidekick? Donkey. Donkey's the sidekick. As soon as Donkey starts helping him, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but they do better. He has some minor victories. And then it's all impossible. She's there. She's locked in the tower. She's got to marry the king. There's no way out. And then what happens? She turns into an ogre, right? And the day is saved, and there's relief, and the lesson is learned, and now they're happier than before because they're both together. The story arc is exactly the same between Die Hard and Shrek. Isn't that crazy? Can you dim the lights for me, please? So what else would work that way?
What I was trying to say is that our new brake pads are really cool. You're not even gonna believe it. Like, let's say you're driving along the road with your family, and you're driving along, and then all of a sudden there's a truck tire in the middle of the road, and you hit the brakes. Whoa, that was close. Now let's see what happens when you're driving with the other guy's brake pads. You're driving along, and all of a sudden the kids are yelling from the back seat, I gotta go to the bathroom, Daddy. Not now, damn it. Truck tire. I can't stop. There's a cliff. And your family's screaming, oh my God, we're burning alive. No, I can't feel my legs. Here comes the meat wagon. And the medic gets out and says, oh my God. New guy's in the corner puking his guts out. All because you want to save a couple extra pennies. To me, it doesn't get out. Do you validate? No.
So this is a slapstick comedy. It really doesn't apply, right? Start. Then you can come back up. Tommy Boy's a goofy kid getting through school, schlepping, drinking beer, having a good time at his fraternity party. He's planning on going through his whole fucking life that way. He's always been a slacker. That's his job, right? What's the inciting incident? Dad has a heart attack and dies. Now there's a giant obstacle. The company's going to go broke. He has to accept the call, right? He has to accept the call. It's on Tommy Boy to save us, right? He accepts the call. Who's the villain? Zelensky, right? Send a couple of, sorry about your marbles, kid. All right. The villain Zelensky. The villain is a lot of villains. The villain's Zelensky. The villain's Rob Lowe. The villain's the future ex-wife. They're all villains. He's up against the world, right? So finally he gets a sidekick, an unexpected sidekick. Richard, what did you do, Richard? What's your favorite baseball team? Is it the Yankees? All right. He gets a sidekick. Tensions rise. They get worse. Now they're impossible. Zelensky's already bought the company. It's over. He straps dynamite to his body and goes into the bank building. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. It's colorful and fun. They win. There's relief. The bad guy loses. The lesson is learned. He gets the girl better than before. This is a story, guys. There ain't no other way to tell them. All right? So if you want to learn storytelling, you got to learn to follow this arc. Yes, ma'am? There have to be people involved. Yeah, you have to be people involved. Okay, so I'll give you one of mine. So you guys are like, well, I don't have stories like that, right? So I'm going to give you something real quick. I have this because I have Evernote. Because I have Evernote. shit, too much. So I'm going to read this to you real quick because this is a fun one. So I was looking for a new upsell for our Family Protection Association, right? So I just looked up Family Heroes on Google. So this YouTube video of this Ellen DeGeneres show pops up where she has these heroes on her show and she gives them gifts and cars and stuff when they've done cool stuff. So I borrowed a story. So I said, congratulations on getting your new gear from the Family Protection Association. Now we'd like to give you this $119 survival tool that could save your life someday free too for completing your offer. More on that in just a second. First, I'd like to tell you a story. Listen carefully because it could save your life. Nashville, Tennessee, 2012. Why did I do that? Place and time, setting a scene. I love Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin, I learned this lesson from, that all of his stories start mid-sentence. You did one once, Alex, the Pavlov's dog story that was mesmerizing from stage. That was fantastic. I still remember that from like probably 10 years ago because I'm watching him going, what an amazing orator. It was really a great job. I talked about it last night with Roland. So, but he says start in the middle of a sentence, which is pretty interesting because it kind of sucks you in just like that. Every Aaron Sorkin stuff, A Few Good Men, all those, they all start in mid-sentence. The first scene of the West Wing starts that way. So watch them all. I know, it's time to let you out, Joanne said almost in a whisper to her little cockapoo Bo, who sleeps with her curled up under her pillow just above her head. Am I setting a scene? Right? Joanne slid back the covers and swung her feet off the bed just as the red digital clock flipped from 5:59 to 6 a.m. She never really needed an alarm. Before her feet could hit the floor, ice cold water went up to her ankles. The room was flooded. She instantly recoiled back onto the bed, mentally recalling the news from the night before, warning of floods. But that stuff never really happened, she thought. Now completely awake, she powered up her sleeping cell phone from the nightstand, dialed her sister Lisa, who lived just a few miles away. Your call cannot be connected this time. Please try back later, a robotic woman's voice said. She flipped on the lamp. Click. Dark. Nothing. The power was gone. So was the heat. Thank God the sun was rising, she said to Bo out loud. Now sitting up in the bed in her flowered flannel gown, the cell phone rings once. She answers and hears, "Sis, are you okay?" It was Lisa. "I don't know. I just woke up. There's water all over the floor," Lisa said. "It's everywhere, Jojo. They just released the dam. You got to get out of there." We stayed at Tom's mother's last night. Joanne's heart sank. She knew Tom's mother's house was over 30 miles away. She knows she's on her own. Yeah, this was my rough cut of this. They edited it later. Lisa commands, "Joe, hang up the phone and call 911. I'm watching the news right now. They're picking up people in John boats along the river. Then call me back." "Okay," says Joanne, hangs up. 911, what's your emergency?" "I think we're trapped," Joanne said bravely, getting out of bed to wade through the water to access the damage, trying not to think of snakes, spiders, and disease that were surely floating at her feet. What are the two biggest fears of people? Spiders and snakes, right? That was totally purposeful. This was bad. How many people are with you?" the operator said. "And what's your address?" "Just me and my little dog." She immediately thought of the Wizard of Oz and then gave the operator her address and promised to dispatch her SOS rescue boat and instructed her to move to the highest point of the house. "You'll have to leave your dog, ma'am. I'm sorry, there's no room." Like hell, thought Joanne silently. Joanne scooped up little Bo and went off to bed. And off they went. The reason I wrote it this way was because I know that our people value their pets more than they do their children, their belongings, and anything else. That's my audience, right? It was deeper now, almost to her knees in just 10 minutes. 3 steps before the top of the stairs, Joanne hears a boom and the entire house shakes, then calm again. Lisa calls again. "They just released the dam. The water's going to raise. Are you upstairs?" "Yes, and I called 911. They're on the way." "How long?" "I don't know." "Oh, my God." Joanne screams as the smoke's rising from downstairs. The house is on fire. "Get on the roof," Lisa commands. "Break the damn window if you have to, Joe." Now shaking, she opens the upstairs window, bends and crawls out with Bo onto the roof. The scene is epic. Water's now 6 feet above the ground and moving rapidly. Worse are open flames coming from her garage. How is that even possible, she thought. How can your house be on fire in a flood? All she could see were the rooftops, water, flooding, and floating cars, no boats. She was soaked and terrified, hearing her sister, with her sister listening in real time. I love you, sis. Shut up, Lisa says, now crying. Tom's on the phone with 911, and they're trying to get a helicopter. Hang on. As flames rose, she could feel the heat. Joanne realized that this might be her last few minutes alive. Hey, hey, Joanne hears from behind her, then a rumble. She looks over the top of the roof to see Jerry Wakefield, her neighbor she had talked to exactly once since moving in, on a small jet ski. Do you need help? He stands and yells, yes, 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 screams Joe. Jerry had gotten his family and pets out the night before, along with some supplies, and they'd spent the night in his truck. He had taken the jet ski back with him in case of flood, so he went back to the house just to grab their pictures. Jerry thrust the jet ski in circles around the house to the next house, grabbing the upstairs gutter to stabilize the small vessel. He took off his jacket and threw it up to Joanne. Put this on. She did. Now just slide your butt down on the roof and get on. Can I take my dog? Yes, but hurry up. We got to go. Joanne squeezed Bo tight under her arm and slid down the roof, cutting her leg on the gutter spike as she lands straddling the jet ski. I'm hung up, said Joanne. Her soaked body was now, her soaked and now bloody nightgown was snagged on the gutter spike. Suddenly, Jeremy snapped a knife from his pocket, hacked off the fabric, and Joanne was free. He put his arm around her and told her to hold on. Guess what my premium is for my offer? Jerry gently gasses the jet ski at first and then speeds up and moves away from the house. Feeling Joanne shaking and crying, it's going to be okay. We're just a couple of miles away from the rescue, Jerry said. Just 200 feet away from the house, kaboom! The entire house exploded in a mushroom cloud of flame and smoke that looked a mile high. There was no rescue boat or helicopter in sight. Joanne would learn later that it would have been at least an hour for either to arrive. Jerry was her angel. Without him, the electrical and gas explosion would have ended her life. Jerry was a hero because he had a plan, supplies, and he knew exactly what to do to protect his family in crisis. Joanne was lucky. What's your plan? Are you supplied? Would you know exactly what to do in a flood, tornado, fire, earthquake, not to mention an attack like the ones in New York City or Boston or Oklahoma City? The Family Protection Association members have plans. We're provided tools, supplies, discover skills to protect their homes and their families. And when you join us today, we want to give you the first free tool, your waterproof Hoffman Richter titanium-coated survival knife that normally sells for $119 free, but today it's yours when you join the FPA. Click the button below to claim yours. Is that impactful compared to, hey, let me tell you about all the junk you're going to get when you join the Family Protection Association? Hard to argue with the story. It's a true story, by the way. I watched the interview on Ellen and wrote the story based on their story. Yeah, you tell it. And you don't claim it to be yours. You know, it's just an example. It's a story that illustrates the point, right? It doesn't have to be your story. Does that make sense to everybody? But if you'll notice in here, there's a lot of things. She's in a pink flannel nightgown. She snags her, you know, there's colors, there's temperature, there's wet, right? There's cold. All the things that help you to set the scene are in there, but the story definitely drives the point home, right? There was no love interest, unfortunately. If she had done it with Jerry at the end, it would have been cool. All right, so just kidding. So that was a story that really worked well for us. And again, like if you don't have them, you can get them from Ellen. You can get them from anywhere else. Just Google a hero story about your thing. You're going to find a success story, a hero story, something like that, right? If I can down the lights one more time, this will be the last time I think today. But at the end of the day, the story is very powerful. If it has a proof element, it's even more powerful, right? At the end, if you can absolutely drive your point home with proof, it's hard to lose, right? And here's a great example.
Bubba Gump Shrimp. It's a household name.
Hold on there, boy. Are you telling me you're the owner of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Corporation?
Yes, sir. We got more money than David Crockett.
Boy, I heard was in my time, but that tops them all.
I thought it was a very lovely story, and you tell it so well, with such enthusiasm.
Would you like to see what Lieutenant Dan looks like?
Well, yes, I would.
That's him right there.
He didn't have to tell that story anymore, right? Proof is everything. So if you've got a proof element, it really does matter. So here's some homework for you. If you want to learn to be a better storyteller. You ask a question.
Where do you pull out the proof?
Wherever you need to make the point the most.
Okay.
I think, yeah. The proof needs to immediately follow the claim, right? So anytime you're making a claim, proof needs to so immediately follow it, the sooner the better. Because if you're making the claim and you give them too long with unsubstantiation, they might bug out on you, right? So here's a great way to learn to tell stories. And this is like I told you, I wrote Halbert to learn to write copy. This is how I've learned to tell stories best. Watch the next movies and TV shows you want. There's a site called scriptologist.com. You can go download the scripts to almost any TV show or movie, right? And start watching them while thumbing the script. It's a fascinating exercise. And it's amazing. You will see a 3-hour movie and the script will be this long. And you don't realize how much of a movie is in action and not in dialogue. An Aaron Sorkin movie, on the other hand, who I believe is really the greatest screenwriter alive for writing dialogue, which is much more what I'm interested in because action's hard to write for our business. But his screenplays are 200 or 300 pages. You know, they're crazy thick. But he writes amazing dialogue. But start watching movies and reading scripts with the scripts on your lap. You'll be surprised how much fun it is. And if you can, start writing some of the scripts like I was talking about with Halbert, the ones you really like, write Die Hard out, rewrite it out, and think about it. It makes you think about what the hell was it this guy was thinking, right? You know, you for whatever reason, when you physically write it, you have an investment in it, right? You really want to understand it. The other thing I would really, really highly recommend, Aaron Sorkin teaches screenwriting. Did you do it, Ben?
What's the other ones that are in that master's class? Like
Yeah. I've not watched the rest. Sorkin's blew me away. It was so amazing with setting the scene, with setting tension. I'd love to watch Ron Howard's on directing too, because I'm sure that he deals with a lot of tension, creating this tension shots, and you know how do you visibly do that? He's so genius. But I love Sorkin's stuff. Really, really, really good. 3 books I'd highly recommend to you. Save the Cat is basically the general idea of the story arc, but told in considerably more detail than we have time to do today. Stephen King on writing, Memoir of the Craft, is a little slow to read, but he really explains setting the scene well. That's where most of my points came out of. And Wired for Story is really good on creating a hook that drags somebody in right from the beginning of a story. So those 3 books I'd really highly recommend.